got used to it.
No, there's a setup here. So
It's all right. I'm fine.
Okay, can we start?
That's fine.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the CMC Sunday talk. Today's talk is The Heart of Chan, Exploring Mind via Mahaprajna Paramita, given by Gilbert. And please, if you can, share your video so we can see each other's faces. And to start, we will recite the 3 refugees and 4 great vows with Gilbert. So please join palm. Vow.
I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless fixations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Amitofo. Good morning to you all, especially good morning to those on the West Coast who got up early to hear this lecture, and to those on the East Coast who will probably have their stomachs rumbling as it gets to the noontime. In presenting this class about Mahayana, it's very, very difficult to decide what to deliver to you or to present to you in terms of Buddha Dharma, because it's so rich and so detailed that it's difficult for us to say, okay, well, this is important, but if I talk about this, then I won't be able to talk about that. So always in the manner in which I've always practiced essentially the essence of the practice. And this essence is important. And what we do is we lay out what the essence of the practice is to give you a flavor of different things. In that moment, very spontaneously, what you might want to hear, what you might need to hear, what will more importantly inspire you to practice and to contemplate. So all of this is very, very important. And so to try to balance that out, I give you a little bit of history, a little bit of doctrine, and then a little bit of meditation so that you can see where things go. I'm starting today with somewhat of a joke about this dog. And the dog somehow had was able to, after several years, speak. And so he went to his master, and his master was sitting there eating his food. And the dog went, "Master, master." And the man looked down at him, and the dog's going, "You know, I can speak to you. After all these years, I can speak to you." And the master said, "Well, what do you want to say?" He says, "Well, you know, the food you're eating there, I want to eat it too." And the master said, "I know." And the dog went, "Whoa." Because the dog was trying to communicate with him. It's a very subtle joke, by the way. But he thought that if he could speak in that language, that it would be given to him just by doing that. And then the master, after the dog walked away very disappointed, he said, "It's a good thing I didn't tell him that he only lives 1/7 of our years." And this is kind of the way we are when we practice Buddha Dharma, is that we cannot just simply be given it. We have to practice it. We have to really work at it. And it's difficult because as a presenter of the Dharma, we have to tell you that you are not real, that you have a finite time. If you wanted to hold on to this, you have a finite time in this world. And then it's over. And that's kind of the moment where you just kind of go, whoa, wait, maybe I want to do something else. But it is this very idea in which the principles of religion are established upon simply because what is happening is that we are trying to extend out beyond what is perceived to be real here. When somebody dies, we look at them and we see them, and we are looking at our own mortality, wondering where did this person go? So we try to conjure something that will extend that person out. And all of the religions up until Buddhism did that. They extended things out and said, oh, you will go here. You will go to Valhalla. You will go, to heaven. You're going to go, if you're a Catholic, I'm sorry, but, you may end up in purgatory. Or you may go to heaven, or you can go to hell. And all of these are everlasting. And so it was a mechanism in which to control the people in terms of as they are on life, trying to establish some kind of an order. Buddhism comes in, and it doesn't necessarily say, the Buddha didn't specifically say anatman, no self, but what he said was not self. This is not self. And everything in Buddhism, all the way through from, if you're talking about Theravada, all the way through to the Tathagata Garbha, it's talking about not self. Now, the Tathagata Garbha sutras change the playing field a little bit, and I'll get into that in a moment. But the idea is that there isn't this life and being. This is was there and presented as we began with this as from the Prajnaparamita Sutras. And so all of this studies that are happening, things that are going on here, whether it was the Madhyamika school, which gave essentially birth to Chan and to the Yogacara school, and we look at all the different sutras that are there, all those sutras are pointing to this ekayana, this one mind, but not with a nature of a duality, that there's something that's not mind. It is just simply saying it's not self. It's not that. It is just suchness. And coming back to this whole thing. And so the Tathagata Garbha sutras are a formulation of all that had gone on before. Now, to us, we're looking at this and we're seeing this kind of an expanse of time, and we're looking back, like saying, which dinosaur came first? And we have to look at this in a very interesting way, because when we see the cavemen, if we were like a paleontologist, we see the cavemen, well, their existence doesn't go back really more than 100,000 years. But the dinosaurs went back 600 million years, 600 million versus 100,000 years. So there were no dinosaurs walking around when the cavemen were there. There might have been still some woolly mammoths and some big crocodiles or whatever, but there's not these gigantic dinosaurs. And so when we're looking at the study of Buddha Dharma, we have to see how it developed. But this is important because a lot of you really are serious students and you want to know this. And this is what's going to take you a little bit further, a little deeper understanding about this. And that's what's important, is so we have to have this deeper understanding. Before we get to this deeper understanding, have you ever sat and contemplated, what is this? Just this. What is it? What is it that we are engaged in? Is this my hand? And is this my other hand? And why doesn't it look like the same when I was a little child? And where am I going? What is this time? Right now, it's gone. Where did I come from? Where did all of this come from? But the Buddhists not only talked about where did this come from, because that was really easy. The ancient proto-religious people, they go, oh, they weren't writing at that point. They were just talking. They're going, oh, well, God made you. God made all of this, because that's an easy solution to this. That God made all of this stuff. We don't have to worry about that. This is not something that we get to. And because we get to the question then, oh, who created God? I mean, did God just appear? Who created him? So we begin to look at this and we begin to answer the questions that we can answer. And we begin to look at things in a way that is more reasonable. And I can't say, Buddhism has a complete a monopoly on reason. There's a lot of things in Buddhism over the years, of thousands of years, people writing stuff. And it's difficult to understand them. And there's difficult to fathom some things. And some things just simply have to wait, that you take it on the faith, that you practice and you practice and you practice. And sometimes there's realizations that come that you said, I thought that was all baloney, but actually there it is. And mind reveals something that you thought was just made up. So when I first started, actually before I became a Buddhist, I was practicing Qigong, and the Qigong I was practicing was Weito Qigong, which is a Dharma protector. And there was the master that was teaching had he gave us these sayings that would just really made me so interested. And one of them was, what appears to be real is not real. And what is appears to be not real is real. And I'm going, what? Because it threw me up onto my head, upside down. What are they talking about? What is this? And I wanted to look at this and see. And so as you look out into the idea of samsara, you look at it through the vision of this duality, through the vision of the five skandha. And as you're looking through this as in the five skandha, you see everything and you put it in little neat compartments of order. I like, I dislike. I need to do this. I need to do this because I need something. I want something. I don't want something. I have this kind of a memory. This memory is going in. I like this pen. Boom, it goes up. Where does it go? Somewhere it goes up. And so if I see the pen again or something like it, I go, I remember, because in my memory, I like this kind of a pen. So I must like this one. And we become confused, upside down, and thinking about reality in this way. You need to just sit and just be in that moment and contemplate. Don't think. Some people would say, oh, that's foolish. Why do you just want to not think? That you're just like in a coma. No, in a coma, you have no, you just have the vestiges of a consciousness, but you don't have the ability to contemplate. We do not understand that contemplation is what opens mind up. Cogitation or conscious thinking does not get us there. So all of this, in terms of what I'm talking about, is what was happening way back when. And then as we look at it, it's a very interesting thing, because hold on a second, my PowerPoint was dissolving. We look in time and we see there's way back 500 BC and probably BCE, 250, 100, 100 CE, 200, 300, 600. 600 is when all of a sudden a lot of things were happening, and it's not just in China, but in also still happening in India. Here was the origination of the Buddha, and so 250 years after, or then all of a sudden things are starting to write down. There's a lot of activity in this time period of 100 BCE of writings. Now, some of these writings here were not interpreted or translated into Chinese until much later on, and until the 100 or 500 CE. Some of them didn't even get there till 600, but they were already in Sanskrit and other languages way back here, but they slowly trickled to China. And so China was given kind of a small dosages of the Dharma. And when we talked about this before, about how it made its way over this Kushan Empire, and in the Kushan Empire, essentially it had all of these areas in here, from Pakistan, Turkestan, whatever all the stands are, and Afghanistan. All of that area right there was a hotbed for Buddha Dharma. And then it made its way across the Silk Road to China. And it came in spurts, but it's very interesting because as it's coming in, then the Chinese are interpreting it with its own indigenous belief systems of Confucianism and Taoism, and then ultimately a neo-Confucianism. And they were talking about the ideals of people, or this idea of immortality. And then Buddhism comes in and says, it's empty. And so Chinese are very interesting because they, at that point, they already had an established system. And so they tried to merge the two together to try to get something from that. But it wasn't something that did cause damage to the indigenous system. What it did was it produced a hybrid of Buddha Dharma in a way that was translated and interpreted by the Chinese culture. So there was what was called a Simplification of Buddha Dharma. It did not change the fundamental essence of Buddhism. It just interpreted what was there. And so when you look at it, there was great care there, and there was great battles, great interpretations, great fights about what is the practice, all the way through from the very beginning, from the first council to the second council, where there was a split back in India of the monastic orders. There was always an interpretation. And so people would say, this is what the Buddha taught. And you'll see the books in the bookstore, what the Buddha taught. Why? Why are they saying what the Buddha taught? Because everything after that was not what the Buddha taught. But they're talking about what they believe to be Buddha Vakana, what came out of the Buddha's mouth. And that's very suspect as well, because how could anybody writing this down 250 years, 300 years after the Buddha passed away, swear that that was exact words that the Buddha taught? But what we practice is what the Buddha taught. What did the Buddha teach? Dhyana, practice. It was something that is very, very important, because when we look at this, and I spoke about this last week, about the word Mahayana. Mahayana is the supreme practice. It is this practice that's there. Why? Because one's putting a great effort. One's putting a sincerity there. One is just not listening, what they call shravakas, which are sound hearers, and just coming and listening. I don't want you people to be shravakans. You come and you listen, but you have to put it into practice. You have to make this your own. And so how do you do this? Mahayana. This was the original interpretation of this. We begin to see this via the Heart Sutra, which is a very palatable sutra because it's a sutrette, very, very small. And so this sutra is telling us about emptiness. And then the culmination of that is that what we see is that we see the idea of that this is compassion. But we're left to interpret that. And so we're left with this emptiness. But all of this stuff is happening, not contemporaneous to 600 AD, but way back here. It's all happening. And what we're doing is we're kind of, it's like hearing the echoes of what happened before. The arguments that were presented, and we're getting it in pieces. And as we're getting it, somebody's coming back and go, I just came back from India. Look, here is the sutra, here's the Nikayas, or here's the sutra, but you got to read this one because this one's a little bit different. This is the Vilamakirti Sutra. This is the Ratnagotra Vibhaga Sutra. These are like switching things. They're changing things here. And so as it was coming into China, all of this information was there. So when we look at Buddhism, we have to see that there are two places where there is action. In this, there's action in India. And then there's action in China in interpreting what happened before. So these things, because there's quite a bit of a lag time before those came to China, but it gave the Chinese a chance to be able to process all that information, even though it was written 300 years before, 200 years before. They're getting it fresh, as if it's fresh news. And so you have to see Buddhism in this way, and what was happening in China is very, very important to begin to understand that, so that you can see what was the progressions of what was happening. Now, I'll go to my next slide here, and hold on. As I move things around, it erases it. What we have, this is a bigger board, is Theravada that was coming up, and they were saying that everything is real. And the Theravadins come up, and that again, we know that the Theravada means a study of the elders. And their main doctrine, besides the Nikayas, was the Abhidharma. And the Abhidharma is Abhi meaning the highest Dharma. So they're looking at it there. Hold on, let me see. And very interesting, their big guns that they had was Sariputra and Vasubandhu. And Vasubandhu wrote great commentaries on the Abhidharma in support of it. And so their idea is everything is real. Then we get to Mahayana. And in the Mahayana, hold on, it looks like Malayana. Sorry. If anybody takes a screenshot or something. In the Mahayana, then what comes of this is the, let's see if I can read it. Yogacara school. And look who was in the Yogacara school initially here is we have, wait a second, that's Vasubandhu again. And his brother Asanga, and they're talking about the Madhyamika school. And you're going, wait a second, isn't he up here? Yes, he is up there. He is the one and the same Vasubandhu who changed. And he changed from the Abhidharma to the Mahayana. Even as of last year, I read an article from a Japanese scholar that was obviously leaning towards Theravadan and still contending that there were two Vasubandhus. There could not have been just one Vasubandhu who went to the other side. I think he literally went to the other side. That's why he was supporting the Madhyamika school. So it's very, very interesting in terms of what you see here with this. And what we also have is Nagarjuna, who came before. And so we have to see how they all fit in there. And we begin to see, okay, well, Nagarjuna was there, and then they wrote commentaries on it. And as they're writing the commentaries on the Yogacara school, and the Yogacara school is talking about that everything is empty. And they call it the consciousness only school. And so the consciousness only school, hold on, somebody's calling me. It made my screen disappear for a moment. So the consciousness only school is one in which is saying that everything is just consciousness, or they could say, sometimes they talk about it as mere consciousness, and I'll get into that in a moment. So this is a little different than saying everything is real. And so from the Madhyamika school, there came this school. And then you'll see, and I'm going to butcher the name, I'm sorry, but the Weisha school, or what they call Shenwei Shulin, or Shenwei Shulun. And that was the Chinese product of the Yogacara school. And in the Shenwei Shulun, then out of that also, well, from the Yogacara school came the Tibetan Vajrayana school. So you see the line going this way. And then the Shenwei Shulun then produced the Prajnaparamita in the Chinese Huayan school, Tiantai school, and Chan. So again, what's happening is we're looking at two separate time periods where all of this is happening here in the Indian. The echo comes to China, and then the Chinese, they take that and go, wait a second, this is even more interesting. And so then they took it, and from here, when it was getting here and being interpreted or translated, then they developed their own systems to interpret what was coming out of India. And as a result of that, that's why we came up with the Huayan school, Tiantai, and Shan. And Shan just looked at it, and where the Huayan school and Tiantai were very scholarly. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, they were very, very scholarly in terms of how they approached it. And they did have their meditation systems. Chan just said, okay, let's just cut this. Let's just be quiet for a while. We know these things. It's not like Chan said, throw away all the books. Even though the scholars were saying, oh, those Chan people, they're dummies because they just want to throw away all the books and just sit there like a bump on the log. And there were some people that did that. But most of them, nevertheless, did not turn their back on the doctrine. And you'll see in the Chan school at further down after 600 CE that we have a heavy reliance on Ekayana, the one mind, that was taught from the beginning by Bodhidharma and continued on. for quite a while, and through the 6 patriarchs of this one mind, or we call just mind. And so this just mind and looking at it then was influenced heavily by what came after that, which was the Tathagata Garbha sutras that talked about Buddha nature. And in this, we have like the Queen Srimala Sutra, the Ratnagotra Vibhaga Sutra, Vilamakriti Sutra, the Tathagata Garbha Sutra itself. And in this, this was a change from the idea of just emptiness. And so this emptiness was there, but as I'd mentioned before, Nagarjuna just went, don't talk about it. See it for yourself. Practice the best you can, and then you will see that how this is. So this is the emphasis on Chan of sitting, and this is where we got to Mo Chao, just sitting. You just sit, but it is not just sitting and then you turn off the switch as if you were some kind of an automaton or a robot that you just turn it off. There's no production of wisdom in that. Same thing with the Huato before the word, is also consistent with all of this, because this before the word is putting the mind back and restoring it to the way it should be, which is before the word. We don't know that. We just think that we have to keep thinking and thinking and thinking. But when we just sit and contemplate, then we're able to be able to use a perception that heretofore has been clouded in the mind. This is not the perception of the 5 skandha, but the perception of mind itself. But the perception of mind itself does not work in the same linear way. The perception of mind itself is different, uses a different wisdom. When we use the wisdom of the samsaric wisdom, we know things because we've learned the things. And we see it. I see this. I know this. But in the wisdom of the Buddha mind, it knows because it is. How could it not know that? So I have a cut on my finger. How could I not know that? Because this very body is all connected. So I would know that. I don't have to have this finger say, hey, look at me. It knows. This body knows it. It is just in this way. What's outside the body? Nothing is outside the body. Mind is a substance of mind. And so when you get there, where else can you go? There's no one. Even when we talk about the ekayana, there's no one. It is what the one returns to. All of those words, all of those concepts, everything falls off. And so this was a progression of the teachings as it went through there. I want to use as a Yogacara school an example of that. Again, the Yogacara school was talking about mere consciousness. And so at this point in the 4th century, so 4th century CE is when the Asanga and Vasubandhu began to make their commentaries on this. And this is where Vasubandhu had abandoned the Abhidharma of that everything is real. And so we get to their concepts of the three natures. And I wanted you to get a flavor for this so that you get it. I'm just giving you like a very scratching the surface of this, but just to give you an idea of where they were coming from with this consciousness only school. And remember, the consciousness only school still is in Mahayana. So let me read one part here. And this was concerning this Vijnapati Matra. And according to Lambert Schmidhausen, the earliest surviving appearance of this term is in the Sandin near Mokkana Sutra. And it says that the passage is depicted as a response by the Buddha to a question which asked whether the images or replicas, which are the object of meditative concentration, are different or separate, which is very interesting. So it says, are these different or separate? And from the mind. So as one is meditating and we see something flying through the mind, is that something real or not real? Is it something separate from that which is perceiving it? So again, we have to go back and look at how mind works, and not just this consciousness. This is not what we're talking about when we're talking about mind. We're talking about the whole enchilada. And so if you have an enchilada, there's cheese in there and lettuce and onions and olives and sauce. But when we talk about, well, that's a whole enchilada, that means everything is there. And we call it an enchilada, but if it's a good one, it won't last very long. It'll be in somebody's stomach very, very quickly. But when we look at that contains everything. And that stomach is just mind itself. So when we look at this, then another of the scholars, Mark Siderit, said, what Vasubandhu means here, and let me read what Vasubandhu said. He said, this world is Vishnapati Matra, since it manifests itself as an unreal object, just like the case of those with cataracts seeing real hairs in the moon and the like. And so what this one scholar was saying was Vasubandhu means here is that we're only ever aware of the mental images or impressions which manifest themselves as external objects, but there is actually no such thing outside of mind. And so this is why they're talking about mind only. All of these appearances are within mind. And these representations are mere representations, which is a Vishnapati Matra, because there's no corresponding thing or object. Just as in a dream, there appear, even without a thing or object, just in mind alone, forms and images of all kinds. And so they're looking at this and saying that there's just this mere consciousness. And that mere consciousness is mind only, which is they all often refer to Yogacara school as mind only school or mere consciousness. All of this is where they're headed with this. It's very interesting because the Yogacara school was the one that developed the 8 consciousness. And so these 8 consciousness were there. And an interesting thing in terms of the 8 consciousness is that the alive Vijnana, this kind of a catch-all of everything, was kind of created after the 7 consciousness that were there, simply because there had to be something where memory and actions are stored. And so they use this 8th consciousness, and which is something that essentially is always there. And it is just mind itself. And as one begins to practice through the consciousness, through the five sensory consciousness, the one that puts it all together, the aggregate, the sixth consciousness, and then the seventh consciousness, which is judging, discriminating, reacting to it via the five skandha. When all of that is seen to be unreal, all of that collapses. And when it collapses, all that's left is this eighth consciousness, which cannot be called the eighth consciousness at that point. It just is what it is. It's just mere consciousness. And so this is really a very, very basic, quick tour of this, but I wanted to give you that as kind of an understanding of where these all fit and how they fit into Mahayana. And so it's important for us to understand where we're going with all of that. So you got a little bit of a taste of that part. The unfortunately, I feel like a tour guide at at the Louvre, where where they have all the famous paintings and stuff and artwork in France, in Paris. And I'm just going, well, if you see over there, that's the room that has this. If you see over here, there's this. This was built in this. And we're passing through so very quickly. And we're just lopping off times and theories. And I wish I could spend the time to go over it in great detail. But I'm trying to give you just a taste of it today. And hopefully at the end of this, that we can have a better understanding of what Mahayana is. In order to practice Mahayana, we need to know what is a Mahayana. And so when we get there, excuse me, we have now a very interesting treatise called The Awakening of Faith in the Mahayana. And I think some of you have studied it. I think even the CMC had a course on Awakening of the Faith of Mahayana. I'm not sure how long the course was. Did anybody know? Anybody take it? You're probably in Chinese. Seems like all the good ones are always in Chinese. But in any case, this Awakening of the Faith in Mahayana comes in at a time, and it's very interesting because as we look at it, we have to see it and say, okay, was this an Indian text or is it a Chinese text? And it's attributed to Avagosa, an Indian scholar. And D.T. Suzuki said he accepted it was of Indian Sanskrit origin, although there's no Sanskrit text remaining. And so, but then he believes that Avagosa was a kind of an honorific appellation due to the profundity of the treatise, meaning it was so deep that they want to say, oh, well, this came from Avagosa. But it is something that's very, very important. And it's connected with the Lankavatara Sutra, the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, and the Avatamsaka Sutra. And so this was said to be translated by Paramartha. Now, Paramartha is a very interesting person because translated a tremendous amount of Indian scriptures into Chinese. And Paramartha was very adept at all of this. It wasn't just him, but he had a whole collection of scholars working with him to do this, understanding we've got to get this into Chinese. India, who knows if, and thank you, Angela, who knows whether this is going to last. In India, we need to preserve it. And so doing this was preserving all of these sutras, and he translated some of the major sutras into Mandarin. Very interesting, because some scholars believe that he was the one that actually created the awakening of faith in Mahayana. And in terms of looking at it and seeing it, presented it to the Chinese. And scholars are totally divided about this. And it's kind of mere conjecture on some of their parts. They kind of look at it. And one of the things that they've been using lately is computer patterns. They're looking for those connections between certain syntax and references to other texts and pulling it up in this way. So they're looking for all of those things that would connect it and say, well, it has a matching with this, or the syntax, or these words were used here. And so modern day, it's very much a different thing. I was reading, and it was a very, very good commentary on the Yogacara by a scholar, but it was a 1974 commentary. And as I was reading it, and I was reading what he was saying, I started seeing, hey, he's saying this, but now they're saying something different, because you could see just in that time period from 1974 to the present time, there was so much more information available in terms of how to do this. I'm kind of digressing, but I wanted to give you a flavor for that as well, so that you see the translations are important, the interpretations are important, the interpretations of how somebody sees something is important. Oftentimes when I see a scholar, I will Google the scholar. And I think I mentioned last time that one of the scholars I Googled, and I went, wait, this doesn't make any sense. And then I found out that the person became a very strong Christian supporter. And so it was logical that he would slant it in a certain way. So when we're looking at things, we look at things from many different viewpoints. So back to the awakening of the faith of the Mahayana. And in this one, we see something very important, and that's that the term itself, when we say awakening of the faith in Mahayana, it is more, you could say, awakening the faith in the absolute, because Mahayana here is referring in a different way to the absolute, but it's let me read something, maybe that might help. The treatise is not discussing faith in Mahayana, rather it is presenting Mahayana style of faith, which is faith in the true suchness of mind. So it's reversing things and saying, this is how we look at it. And if one has a realization, then this is how one gets the faith, this deep faith of Mahayana. And so as we see this and we apply these realizations to the sutras, it changes the sutras. It changes our understanding of how we use these sutras. We can see the Ekayana. We say, well, that's what the Buddha Nature Treatise was talking about. That's what the Vatamsaka Sutra was talking about, the Lotus Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra. All of those, if you remember what I said before, is that it's this word here, Vaipulya. Vaipulya means that they're contained systems, and it deviated from the Theravadan teachings, where the Theravadan teachings were just handing out, here, this is a Nikaya, here's something that the Buddha said, take this, and and then here's another one that he said, some analogy or metaphor, or whatever he was doing. And then they were going, the Mahayanists at this point were going to them, is that all you got? And they go, what do you mean? This is the words of the Buddha. Is that all you got? That's as far as you went with all of this? That you want to go and reach nirvana? There's got to be something more here. Got to be something deeper. So the Abhidharma from the Theravadins was presented as a counter to that. And it became part of the Tripitaka, where we had the Nikayas, the Abhidharma, and the Vinaya, the monastic rules. And this triple basket was what now the Theravadins had and said, okay, this is what we bring to the table. And then the Mahayana said, no, that's not that way. It's everything is not real. Everything is empty. And as a result of that, then they presented this, and that's where we got the Heart Sutra as a counter to that, and the Prajnaparamita Sutras and all these other sutras. But these sutras were like, if you didn't like this one, how about this one? And this one, and this one, and this one, in terms of piling on Buddha Dharma that was Ekayana. And this Ekayana comes from in the Mahayana, where they were talking about these two truths, the apparent reality and absolute reality. Here comes that word again in terms of absolute, and saying, well, the apparent reality makes appearances that everything is there. And if you get caught on that, you're not going to be able to get there, because no matter what, you're still looking around saying everything is real. It's mine, but it's real. And so Nagarjuna said everything is empty. So this was a major turn in terms of how that works. Let me see if I can get to that. I really wish I could just download this stuff onto you guys. This is worth kind of exploring from the Yogacara school, because again, Yogacara at this point, when we're talking about, let's say, the Lotus Sutra, there is a Yogacara follows it, the Nichiren follow it, and the Chan school follows this as well in terms of what is in there. And so a lot of the things here, they're almost there and they almost fit. There, we can't really say, okay, what is a specific school stat? It's standalone because it has these people who are presenting it. But on the other hand, it's still Mahayana nature. It's still there, and that was perfected by the Tathagata Sutras, which said that everything is the self nature of mind, but the self nature of mind in a way in which there's no self. It is just the suchness. That's why they use the word Tathagata and Tathagata, thus come one or thus gone one. So in the Yogacara school, there was an examination of what they call the three natures and emptiness. And in these three natures, there's what's called Trisvabhava. In the Trisvabhava, the first one, and again, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher these Sanskrit names, Parikalpita Svabha, and this is called fully conceptualized nature. This is what most people walk around. They're in a fully conceptualized nature. Everything they see is conceptualized. Everything they touch, I think, therefore I am. I see things and therefore it exists. All of these things are there. So it's a fully loaded state of delusion, of ignorance. And one is not aware of how things arise. They may even create a God to say, okay, it's God's will in everything that's happening around us, and I'm subject to this. And so when they're in the state of imaginary constructed nature, they can make no progress, because this is subject-object dualism. Then we get to another part, which is Paratantra Svabhava, and this is the other, and in this part, everything is seen as dependent origin nature of dharmas, or causal flow. So we go, oh, this is the 12 nidanas. This is how things happen. And so as we are seeing this, we see that there is this absence of the existence of nature in conditions that arise and perish. And so in this way, what we're seeing is understanding how it works. So I would call this level acquired Dharma. It is where practitioners practice and look into things. And as we begin to practice this and we see this and we begin to contemplate, we ultimately could, in the state of contemplation, I had given a class on Mahabua from the forest tradition, and he was describing to his disciple the progression of meditation at the very end. And his disciple had been caught up in this beautiful, wonderful brilliance of light and saying, oh, this is very incredible, thinking that this was an enlightening experience. But Mahabua was saying, no, this is the luminous nature. This is the radiance of mind, but still there's a fundamental ignorance there of the self. Something is observing that. And so at this stage, one can, even in the Yogacara school, we can interpret it in the same way, that it doesn't get you all the way there. So the final one is this is what's called fully accomplished, Parinisapana Swava, fully accomplished or consummated nature or true nature of things. So this is the suchness of things. It has gone beyond all conceptions, all understanding of conceptions. You cannot sit there and say, oh, this is so great, I understand now. Because mind is revealing itself to you. And ultimately, at this point, there's no discriminations. There's just a pure radiance of the mind. But one is still looking at it and superimposes this onto the mind when we cannot see this very thin layer of self that's superimposed onto it. We have to break through that. So many people stop there and say, oh, I got it. I'm enlightened. No, it isn't in this way. They haven't gone through. They haven't finished. It requires Mahayana, the supreme practice, to break through that. This practice comes, as Bodhidharma said, through principle and practice. So as we practice the principle, then it will come. It is why there was a distinction between sound hearers, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, which are those who have not been exposed to the profound Dharma teachings, and Bodhisattvas or Buddhas, where all of that all comes together. And so the Pratika Buddhas cannot really see the profoundness of mind or generate Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. So Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi is a supreme perfected wisdom, and the supreme perfected wisdom is aware of the appearances of sentient beings, aware of the suffering, but understands that all of this is illusory. Nevertheless, there is a compassion generated to deliver these sentient beings of an illusory nature. And then you go, well, why? Why is this way? Why do they not just let them be? But you have to contemplate that. You have to look at that. Even if I told you why, it would make no difference to you, because it would just simply be the second stage, which is a dependent origination. And again, thank you, Angela, for pointing that out. I really appreciate that, because it helps you, because I otherwise have to stop and explain it. So this was what was happening with the Yogacara school. But again, even from the Thai forest tradition, which is Theravada, it's still there. These all match up. And it's an incredible, wonderful thing in terms of how we look at this, and then how we begin to see the Tathagata Garbha Sutras, which take it beyond and into the position of that this is there in terms of what the self nature of mind is, and it's a wonderful way. I've run out of time, and I probably touched on about 2% of what I wanted to tell you today. But anyway, I know it went fast through this, but I want to give you a flavor. It's impossible for me to tell you everything, but what I want to do is give you a flavor so you can orient yourself and say, okay, this is what Mahayana is. And you begin to get this feeling of Prajnaparamita or Mahaprajnaparamita, this supreme practice, and how it applies when you're sitting on a cushion. And when you're sitting on a cushion, you can't be there and you're just going, okay, I'm going to give it the best 1 minute. I wonder what the score is in the game. I wonder if I fed the dog. I wonder what I'm going to do later. And then it doesn't work. When I present this in a retreat, oftentimes people get into a very deep samadhi or get some realizations. Do you know why? Because they practice. I implore them, please don't waste your time on that cushion. It's so precious. Please sit there, contemplate, shut up. Just shut it all off. And if you can do that, then it will be revealed to you. There's nothing that you have to reach out and get. It will just be there. There will be realizations that come to you just simply because you are practicing in the correct way. What are you practicing? You're contemplating. You're contemplating. You have the foundation of the Buddha Dharma. You know what's there. You know what to expect. You don't have to even think about this. Oh, Gilbert said this was going to happen. You just sit, and it will come to you. But you have to practice in the proper way, this supreme practice, this sincere practice, and then it will work. So what I'm giving to you is where the pedigree is in all of this, of where Chan comes from. So as we're talking about this, we're also talking about Chan, because all of this is Chan. And so we cannot separate it out and say, oh no, this was Yogacara, this is this and this. That's foolishness. We see the common ground in all of this, and we practice. We don't have to debate it all or distinguish it all. We take the heart of it. That's what's important, is we take the heart. Okay, I'm finished for today, except for questions. If you have any questions, please ask them.
So if you have questions, please raise your hand, or you can post your question on chat. Before we go on, I just want to mention that from CMC that you are all invited to write a reflection on Gilbert's lectures. Today is actually the second last one. Next week, we have one more on this series, and that will be all for this year. So also, we will post, if you want to continue to learn from Gilbert, we will post the Zoom meetings that he is giving on Monday night at 9:30 EST time. So, so two things, please write up a reflection, and also please copy and put it on your calendar for the Monday class. So we will take questions.
Mark.
Hey, Gilbert.
Hello.
You talking about the one mind and so other very important, but just focus on the one mind. There are many people criticize the Chan practice. They only focus on method. They don't read sutra, and they don't link the sutra to the practice. But your right view, I think, is hit the nail. Now, we only listen to you every Monday. Now we listen to you on Sunday. But the other, I think, 24/7, we are doing nothing. Although we try to practice the right view to contemplate. Now, how do we fuse between this sutra, which provide the right view, and get into the method? Because you told us using the method, don't think about the theory from the heart and the mind method itself. But in the meantime, you also emphasize the right view is the foundation for us to practice with the method. Now, how do we enhance during our daily practice except when we stay with you? Is there any other sutra or other, the Dharma, which you can recommend it, just like what you said, awakening the faith in the Mahayana? I'm trying to focus on Tathagata, on the one mind. Did you have any suggestion? How do we combine or fuse them together so daily practice, we keep the mind of the right view, contemplate, but in the meantime, we also practice the method?
Your question is an excellent question. And because as I had mentioned that Bodhidharma said that there was two ways to enter, through principle or practice. The principle is a studying of the Buddha Dharma. And actually, probably my greatest realization, I don't talk about enlightenment or anything like that. That's foolish to talk about. But my greatest realization came off the cushion. And it was studying and being in deep study. And I was studying for the purposes of presenting a class in a retreat. But my mind I had just finished giving a lecture, and I went back to my quarters and was reading. And all of a sudden, boom, I was hit with something very, very profound that literally lasted for months. And so it's possible to do that. The contemplation is important. Contemplation is functional, and this is what's difficult for us to understand. We don't eliminate thought. We just eliminate the attaching to this thought or discriminating about thought or discriminating thoughts. So when we talk about the term, hold on a second. I'll write it down for you. These terms here, akusala and kusala. So kusala is a clinging thinking of things. Akusala is a not clinging. So it is the nature of the thought that when we practice and when we are practicing, we don't cling to the thought. So we use the thought just like I'm using the thought now, but poof, it's gone. Poof, it's gone. We don't cling to it. So as we begin to practice, this is contemplation, because we become aware of our surroundings. We become aware. We're no longer in that first stage of attaching. We're in the second stage of this seeing things as origination, dependent origination. And then when we get to the third stage, we're applying it. The contemplation is being applied moment to moment to moment. And in this application, what happens is that the mind begins to clarify. And I hate to say it that way. Let me back that up, because that's not the correct way to say it. The mind begins to lose its delusions and is able to function properly because it's beginning to become devoid of all these attaching thoughts or these clinging thoughts. And as a result, it sees things as they're appearing, knowing clearly it's in the present moment. This present moment is non-existent as well. But nevertheless, it is how that we practice. And this is very, very important in terms of understanding. So this is what we do off the cushion, is we become aware of arising thoughts. We become aware of discriminations. We see things in a different way, and it enables us to be able to harmonize with not only the living beings, the sentient beings, but the environment itself, so that we feel more responsible for protecting the environment. We protect the environment in terms of the social environment by our conduct, but we protect the actual environment of this earth environment by our conduct as well. And so we're mindful that we are the caretakers of not only the earth, but our fellow sentient beings. And we want to make sure that they're there. This is the functioning of the practice. Samatha Bhadra is Pushan Pusa is action. And so we put that into action. When we sit on the cushion, we put into action a great perfected practice of contemplation. Now we are not engaged in the world, we're engaged in meditation. So be engaged in meditation. So when you're engaged in meditation, you contemplate, you stay with the contemplation. Your mind does not stray. Of course it's going to stray, but you keep bringing it back, bringing it back, bringing it back. And in this way, this is something that is very, very important in how you practice. So the two ways, off the cushion and on the cushion, are very important. The two ways require contemplation and, as you had mentioned, right view. So the right view has to be there in order for us to be able to practice in the right way. Then we can practice. If we just sit without right view, it's very, very difficult. I feel very sad because I often run into practitioners that have been practicing for years and still lack right view. All of a sudden, when right view is presented to them, it's as if the dam burst open and mind just flows in. And it's very, very incredible. And they're so thankful. And so, when you get a realization like that, it's like you just think, how stupid I was. How it was right there all the time in front of my nose, and I could not see it. And I was just stuck with this. But this is something that is useful to everyone. I really want to share this with so many different people. Okay, next question. There was Sao Min.
Hi, Gilbert. Thank
Hello.
you for the teaching, and it really inspired me. My question is, when we start to practice, like myself, I start from hear the Four Noble Truths. So the suffering, and how do you find what's the suffering, and how do you reduce the suffering, or the suffering disappear. And how do we generate this Bodhi mind? After your practice, you still keep practice and help others, not just when you think you're finished. More like a Dharma to me, that when I begin that way. And how do I need to generate this Bodhi mind very beginning, so on the way, so you will keep that part, or in some part you have to keep doing this kind of remind yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I can't remember the Sanskrit term for it, but you could analogize it to, as you're climbing up the mountain, and Shifu used to equate it like a fog enshrouded mountain. But as you're climbing up the mountain, you don't know how long it's going to be until you get to the top, but you use a constant and sincere effort, the right effort, to get there. And so when you use the right effort, you're applying the right view in everything that you do. And then as you get up, and then you have a realization that all of this is just an illusion. And you hear the words that this is an illusion, but there is a realization that this is an illusion. Um, and and the only way one could get that realization is by stepping out of samsara and awakening from the dream, to be able to see the dream and the samsaric world from outside of the samsaric existence. And so here you transcend the worldly wisdom into a transcendental wisdom. Um, we don't seek it; it comes on its own. No matter what we can do, we cannot get it just simply by wishing for it. But wisdom is seeking wisdom, so we apply the wisdom all the time. At some point, then, as one reaches the peak of the mountain, the fog clears, and then one reaches a state of non-returning, or their choice to return or not to return, but they reach a state in which they freely apply the Dharma to whoever is willing to, in accordance with causes and conditions. And in this free application of the Dharma, they understand that there is this function of mind which they attune to, which is the Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. And so as we begin to practice in this way, it's effortless. I don't have to put effort into anything that I do. And if I study for hours, it's effortless. It has nothing. I don't log my hours or whatever. It is just something that one does, and there is a zeal there of wanting to help others. This zeal doesn't come from this idea that I know better. It's more of a zeal as I've been there. And so you kind of tie into that, and so you, because you have been in the samsaric realm, you know how hard it is to be able to overcome it. But you use this in this way, and if you can practice in this way, it will serve you well. Don't expect anything. Just practice and contemplate and understand what contemplation means. And the more that you delve into it, the more you are investigating mind, then the clearer the mind will get. Okay. Any other questions? This should be good stuff for a lot of you. You know, there's a lot here. Wow, no other questions. I burned you guys out again today. So I don't know how CMC is going to do this. In a way, I see next week is my last go round with you for a while. But if there's an interest in continuing on, certainly my Monday night class is one, but maybe we can generate some more classes. I don't know what they have on schedule, but I would still be amenable to presenting this, because the more I present this, the more you come to the Monday night classes, the more you will see that there's such a great value in this, and it keeps you sincere in your practice. And each time, even though sometimes you hear me talk about things that sound the same, all of a sudden you hear something that is what I call a turning phrase, and it clicks to you. All of a sudden, it's kind of like a wake up call, and we take those and we explore them, and we use those turning phrases to practice. And as you begin to do this, you'll see more and more how the Buddha Dharma, how incredible it is. Its history is amazing. I wish I could just go through and discussed with you all the subgroups of the Buddha Dharma, and each brought something special to the table, a kind of polishing one facet of this multifaceted diamond that's there, and so enabling you to look inside the diamond itself. Again, that's why the Pulya is important, because going back to Mark's question, that any of those Mahayana sutras are a complete system. And so if you just really want to concentrate on one, fine. If you want to understand more, you'll find out how interconnected they are. Okay, there's a question coming up.
Yeah, David has a question.
Okay.
Hi, Gilbert. Thank you for this talk. I have a little bit of a confusion about consciousness from the Yogacara perspective versus the consciousness used to describe one of the skandhas. Is there a difference? If so, what is the difference?
Yeah, the way, as I'd mentioned, in terms of the three consciousness, hold on, sorry, the three natures, what they call Tris Vabhava, is that one of them is just a diluted consciousness, that we think everything is all connected, everything is real. The next one is kind of the learned wisdom of seeing dependent origination, and we apply it. But then the next one is a complete realization, which is a merging of mind. The consciousness themselves are consciousness. They're still on the samsaric side, but the perception of mind is different. Okay, the perception of mind is mind. There's no consciousness there separate and apart from mind. It is just the suchness of mind recognizing what is appearing, the phenomenal side. And again, I feel so sorry because I didn't have an opportunity to talk to you about Tian Tai or Huayan maybe next week, where we talk about phenomenon, noumenon, and the noumenon being the base, what we could call the matrix. I can use that word now because people forgot about the Matrix movie, because it's Matrix, but the matrix, or what they call the mind ground. Mind ground is just simply the Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya is everything. There's nothing that's separate from it. So as we begin to see this, then we understand, okay, in the Dharmakaya, there's consciousness. Consciousness, Dharmakaya is not in consciousness. So if you use the going back to your school days, and you see a Venn diagram and you go, this is consciousness, this is mind. And again, I have to show it with arrows pointing out infinite, because it cannot be defined as borders, but this consciousness is there. What we do is there's a saying that I have, and it's a good one for you to remember. And it says, sages return consciousness to mind, fools turn mind into consciousness. Okay. And so in this way, as we begin to practice, we see how this works. But so you don't confuse consciousness with that. And that was kind of a little bit of the tweak on Yogacara, because they're saying, oh, you're talking about these consciousness, in terms of it, but everything is just the self nature of mind. So the Tathagata Garbha Sutras went on to explain more, and not only that, but went on to explain how the self nature of mind functions via the mind's perception, which is totally different. Mind's perception is nonlinear, non-dual. It is now, whatever is appearing, wherever it's appearing, it's in the present moment. The present moment is the Buddha mind. There is no present moment. It is just Buddha mind. We talk about present moment for people to begin to fathom. Don't hang on to the past, don't hang on to the future, but the present moment is a slightest pinpoint of time. When you practice and you contemplate and you shave that present moment to this pinpoint, that's when you make a realization on the cushion. You shave off the future and the past. You just keep pointing it to the present, to the present, to the present, to the sharpest pinpoint, and you keep it there. Okay. All right. Any other questions? I know we've been going for a while. I see some people dropping off, but that's natural. Any other questions? Last questions? Yes. All right. Okay. I think that's enough. I think, you know, we probably pounded this quite a bit. I'll try to bring this, you know, as much as I can, kind of connect it all together. But what I wanted to do is show you how complex even the study of Mahayana or the definition of Mahayana is. So keep practicing. Make sure that this is not your only Dharma practice. Okay. All right. And
Thank you, Gilbert. I wish
go.
you can take us more into depth for each of the sutras you mentioned today. You really gave us an overview. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be
I
great.
still have a lot more, but thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I will do my best to connect it all together, because I wish I had this class when I was starting out. It would have saved me a lot of time. But in any case, you know, it's something worthwhile to do, and then share it with others. Okay. So
Will you be talking about it on your Monday class, or you'll be continuing this series later on?
Yes, because in the Monday class, it depends on where I'm at, but generally that one is a kind of an advanced. I know some people, they look at it and go, well, I only understand half. I'm going, that's pretty good. If you can understand half or a quarter, that's still not bad. You know, that's a lot more than you're going to get just, you know, just listening to how to be a good person. And all of that is all contained in what I'm talking about. But I'm trying to take it beyond so that you can understand how this all fits. So yeah, the Monday night classes are kind of an interesting one where I can follow a particular vein. And this time I'm talking about the Vilamakritti Sutra, and only a very small part of it. So we'll finish that up tomorrow.
Okay.
So thank you
We'll
all
see you
for
next time.
coming.
Yeah, thank you. Please join Palm now and bow. Thank you.
Amitofo, I bless you all. Please stay safe. No one is immune to the COVID and immune to suffering. So please do what you can. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.